Being a Trundle one-trick in Emerald and Diamond can be challenging sometimes. I would say that this problem is not so much about the champion, but more about being a one-trick. It doesn't matter if you one-trick in Riven, Trundle, Irelia, or Pantheon for example. They all have the same issue: bad matchups. Basically every champion has bad matchups and it's unavoidable to run into them when you play. Then you might ask, what is the point in becoming a one-trick then? Becoming a one-trick is considered by many to be a very fast way to climb and improve at the game. The reason for this being is that you'll become very comfortable with the champion that you are one-tricking. This allows you to focus more on the game itself and how to handle different situations fundamentally at their core. One-tricking also helps you to improve your decision making. For me, as a Trundle one-trick, the mindset that I have is that it doesn't really matter what champion I would be playing. The outcome will be more or less the same. And what truly decides the outcome of the game is who plays League of Legends better and not the champion that they are playing. Now, you shouldn't of course take this mindset to heart. It is true that sometimes you get cock and ball tortured so hard that you can't really even play the game. But I believe that that's just part of the process and ultimately inevitable, especially if you had to first pick and the enemy is confident in counterpicking. There are quite a few things you can do in bad matchups. The first thing you need to have is confidence. Without confidence, you can't play to your maximum potential, and it's required if you want to have impact, especially as a top laner. Counterpicking. Some people play the game only to counterpick. While counterpicking can sometimes be a good idea, it can also be a bad one. If you are not familiar with the champion you are playing, chances are you can't play them properly or to their maximum potential. You might even lose a matchup that you are supposed to win if you're first timing a champion you picked only to counter the enemy. This can especially be true if the enemy has great mastery over their champion. Of course, counterpicking can sometimes work and is a valid strategy, but most of the time, if you take the correct runes and itemize correctly against someone who is counterpicking, you can just farm out the laning phase and win by out-macroing the opponent. In bad matchups, matchup knowledge comes first. For example, if you know that you have better wave clear than the enemy, you should look to push the wave before the enemy laner becomes too strong for you to beat. It's possible for you to obtain priority this way and help your jungler get the Void Grubs or the Scuttle. If you are in the river before the enemy, it can very often lead to the enemy jungler either tilting or dying because their laner didn't follow. You also have to take into account that not everyone plays their games at maximum intensity. Everything doesn't play out the same way in practice as it does on paper. If you put conscious effort into your wave management and really think what the best course of action at each point of the game would be, you are guaranteed to come out on top on someone who just autopilots the entire game. In order to beat bad matchups, you need good mental. Don't play too many games in a session or you might autopilot and lose games that you might have won. Champion mastery is also very important. Knowing the limits of your champion can sometimes surprise the enemy. Staying aware of the fact that the enemy is a human, just like yourself, is important too. In many melee versus ranged matchups, the ranged opponent can take the matchup as an instant win. Playing confidently and knowing your limits can often give you wins over opponents who are cocky or have weak mental. Understanding jungle tracking and taking advantage of range opponents that like to push the wave is important too. Ganking range opponents is quite often really easy, and them tilting before you do because of ganks is a very real thing that can happen. It's also important to trust your team and accept that in some games you will get carried. It's okay to get carried every once in a while, and accepting this will yield you more consistent results long term. Being able to adapt into different situations is important too. Knowing how to itemize and knowing which runes are the best to take in each situation is something that helps you climb. If you are expecting to take a lot of poke, maybe take Dorn Shield, or Fleet Footwork, or Face Rush, if you are looking for something to help you close the gap between an enemy. Playing into bad matchups is ultimately something that will be difficult, but understanding that you can win even when facing them is important. Getting rid of mental blocks and being able to see a situation from multiple different perspectives is a very underrated skill in my opinion. Try to see both the good and the bad in the matchup that you are playing, and try to look at the bigger picture. I would also like to add that playing games is what helps you become better mechanically. Knowing all of this information won't do you any good if you are not going to put in the effort to actually improve. Preserving mental and laning to the best of your ability is what lets you climb at the end of the day.